Jack had always thought weddings were predictable. Flowers, fancy clothes, speeches, maybe some dancing. But as he stepped into the grand intergalactic wedding hub, he realized how wrong he had been. The room was enormous, stretching higher than any human building he had ever seen. Light floated in strange patterns above, and guests from dozens of planets mingled below. Some had 4 arms, others glowing eyes, and a few looked almost human. Except their skin shimmered in metallic hues. He was here for his cousin's wedding. A small human-alien union, and expected something simple. But even that had turned into a spectacle, with hovering musical instruments, levitating cakes, and an entire orchestra of alien musicians playing harmonies that made Jack's ears tingle. Jack sighed and adjusted his tie. "Normal wedding," he muttered under his breath. "Yeah, right?" Then came the approaching delegation. They moved with precision, their uniforms sharp and alien symbols glowing faintly along the edges. Jack assumed they were part of the entertainment, or maybe officials making sure everything ran smoothly. But when they stopped in front of him and bowed slightly, one spoke in perfect galactic common, the standard language used across human and alien colonies. "Jack Thompson," the tallest one said, voice firm. "You have been selected according to the laws of the Lyrian system. You will marry Princess Lyra of House Violen." Jack blinked. "Wait, what?" I'm here for my cousin's wedding. I don't know any princes." "You are the chosen bridegroom," the tallest officer repeated, ignoring his protests. "The selection is binding. The ceremony cannot be delayed." Jack opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. He looked around, hoping someone else would intervene, but the room was filled with witnesses. Curious eyes from dozens of species stared at him, some confused, some amused. There must be some mistake," Jack said. "I can't. I mean, this is impossible." "No mistake," said another officer, this one with skin that shimmered like liquid silver. "The law is clear. The princess must marry the chosen human." Jack ran his hands through his hair. "Chosen? Human? Like, randomly? Seriously?" "Yes, the selection is random, but binding. You will accompany the princess immediately to the private ceremony area." Before he could protest further, a sudden gust of air and a loud shout made Jack spin. A young figure had appeared at the top of a sweeping staircase. Her hair glowed faintly purple, and her eyes were sharp and luminous. She flung her cape dramatically behind her and shouted, "Finally! My human has arrived." Jack froze. You are the princess?" "I am Lyra, the one destined to share eternity with you," she said, throwing her arms wide. "The stars have chosen us, and the cosmos itself will witness our union." Jack blinked. Okay." Lyra descended the stairs with exaggerated grace, every step calculated for maximum effect. She paused midway, turned sharply, and proclaimed, "Do not mistake my theatrics for frivolity. I am serious about this. Very serious." He couldn't help but glance at the audience. A few aliens tilted their heads, unsure if this was part of the ceremony or if the princess was genuinely overdramatic. Jack's stomach twisted. "Look, I think there's been some misunderstanding. But before he could finish, a small holographic panel appeared in front of him, showing the official law of House Violen. Words floated in midair. Any human chosen by the Lyrian system is bound in marriage to the princess. Refusal will result in interplanetary sanctions. Jack groaned. He had read enough sci-fi novels to know this was serious. Alien law was rarely flexible. And interplanetary sanctions? That sounded like a headline he definitely didn't want to see about himself. Lyra clapped her hands, making a sound like bells. "Fear not, my human. You will learn to embrace destiny. Together, we shall dazzle the galaxies." Jack muttered under his breath. Dazzle the galaxies. Yeah, right. They were escorted to the ceremony chamber, which was even more extravagant than the hall. Light cascaded in prismatic colors, bouncing off the crystalline walls. Strange flowers emitted soft humming noises, and alien musicians floated above, tuning instruments that Jack couldn't even name. He noticed a table filled with ceremonial foods. Some glowed, some wiggled slightly, and one even hovered a few inches above the plate. Lara looked at him expectantly. You must partake, human. This is the ritual of joining. Each bite strengthens the bond, she declared. Jack stared at a hovering gelatinous cube. Strengthens the bond. Or kills me. Lyra laughed, melodramatic and musical. You will survive, human. Trust me. He sighed and picked up a piece cautiously. It was surprisingly sweet, and a warm sensation spread through his body. Lyra gasped and clutched her chest. See, already connected. Jack forced a smile. Great. Bonded by alien candy. The ceremony itself was a blur. Jack had to mimic her gestures, recite vows in galactic common, and bow in ways that would make a contortionist jealous. Lyra's flair made each step feel like an exaggerated performance. At one point, she fainted dramatically. Of course, but rolled gracefully to her feet before anyone could panic. After what felt like hours. The efficient and alien with multiple arms finally declared them married. Jack stood there, exhausted and confused, while Lyra threw her arms around him. My human. We are one. The galaxies will sing of us. Jack laughed nervously. Yeah, I'm sure they will. Lyra's theatrics didn't stop. On the way back to the guest area, she insisted on recounting every detail of the ceremony to the audience, pausing for dramatic effect, asking questions like, wasn't my hair glorious? And, did you feel the cosmic energy? Jack tried to stay calm, but it was impossible. He could see now why people had warned him about intergalactic aristocracy. Marrying a human would be chaotic enough, but marrying an overdramatic alien princess was, well, a full-time job. That night, Jack was escorted to his quarters in the royal suite. It was enormous, filled with floating furniture and walls that changed color based on mood. Lyra followed, of course, insisting on explaining the suite's features in excruciating detail. And here, she said, pointing to a floating chair, you may rest your mortal body. But beware! This chair adapts to your emotions. Should you feel fear or doubt, it may lift you into the air to teach humility. Jack swallowed. Right, humility. Got it. She didn't stop. And this window overlooks the city of Valen Prime. Observe the beauty, the lights, the motion, the majesty. Soon, you and I will be the rulers of attention wherever we go. Jack sat on the floating chair, which remained obedient, thankfully. He exhaled slowly. So, this is my life now. Married to an overdramatic alien girl. Lara twirled dramatically in the room. Oh, human, do not despair. Life with me will be an adventure. Each day will bring excitement, wonder, and the occasional melodramatic flourish. Jack couldn't help but smile faintly. She was ridiculous, yes, but there was something almost charming about her intensity. Even in her theatrics, there was a spark of intelligence and energy he had never seen before. As he lay down to rest, Jack wondered what tomorrow would bring. If today was any indication, it would be filled with unexpected rituals, alien politics, and perhaps more of Lyra's dramatic announcements. But despite his exhaustion and bewilderment, a tiny part of him felt curious about her. Curious about what he might learn from a mind so different from his own. Curious about how he could survive this chaotic marriage. And deep down, he realized something else. This might be the strangest, most difficult challenge of his life. But somehow, It also felt like the start of an adventure worth experiencing. As Jack drifted into an uneasy sleep, Lyra watched over him, her eyes glimmering with excitement. "My human," she whispered dramatically, "the galaxies will remember us. But first, we conquer tomorrow." Jack groaned softly. "I think I need a strategy. And maybe coffee." The stars outside shimmered, as if laughing along with them, hinting that Jack's life was about to become far more extraordinary and overdramatic than he could ever have imagined. The morning light shimmered through the color-changing windows of the royal suite. Jack rubbed his eyes and slowly sat up on the floating bed, which gently hovered a few inches above the floor. Beside him, Lyra was already awake, stretching in a way that made him wonder if humans were even capable of such flexibility. "Good morning, my human," she declared dramatically, her voice echoing in the large room. "The cosmos itself greets us today. We must rise and embrace destiny." Jack groaned. "Do destiny and breakfast come together, or do they take turns?" Lyra tilted her head, eyes sparkling. "Both. Every action of the day is a performance, and breakfast is the first act. Come, partake in the ceremonial morning meal." Jack followed, already wary. He had learned his lesson from yesterday. Never underestimate Lyra's flair for dramatics. The meal was not ordinary. The dishes glowed softly, some floated above the plates, and each bite triggered a small, harmless effect: sparkles, musical notes, or a soft shimmer across his skin. "Do not fear," Lyra said, waving her hands theatrically. "These flavors bind us further. Each bite strengthens our connection and awakens your human potential." Jack nibbled cautiously. Somehow, the food was delicious, and he had to admit that the gentle sparkles were entertaining. After breakfast, Lyra insisted on a tour of the city. Jack had imagined sightseeing with someone new might be pleasant, but with Lyra, it was an entirely different experience. Every citizen they passed received her full attention. She bowed, waved, and spoke in melodious tones that made even the grumpiest-looking alien pause. "Behold the streets of Valen Prime," she announced. "Each corner tells a story, and today, you and I become part of that story." Jack muttered under his breath, "and a very loud part it is." As they walked, Lyra explained the intricacies of her planet's politics. Jack had expected fluff and theatrics, but beneath her drama, she was sharp and intelligent. She could read the expressions of nearby diplomats, anticipate their reactions, and even subtly influence their decisions with small gestures or words. Jack found himself impressed despite himself. Lyra might be overdramatic, but she was clearly capable of managing the complexities of interplanetary life. Their walk was interrupted by a commotion. Near the city's main council plaza, rival alien houses were gathered, arguing fiercely. Jack could see the tension rising, and instinctively he stayed back. Lyra, however, walked straight into the center, arms flung wide. "Peace," she shouted. "Let not petty disputes overshadow the arrival of the human groom and his destined bride." The crowd froze, staring at the two of them. Jack felt his face heat up. This was way beyond anything he had imagined a morning stroll would entail. "Human, do not be afraid," Lyra said softly. "Your presence is part of the law. And sometimes humans bring clarity where others only see confusion." Before Jack could protest, she began to speak to the council members in precise, formal language. Her words were calculated, almost theatrical, but they carried weight. Jack watched in amazement as rival delegates nodded, murmured in agreement, and even backed down from what seemed like an inevitable clash. Jack realized that Lyra's dramatics were more than mere performance. They were a tool she used masterfully to navigate politics, keep people off balance, and influence outcomes. He felt a flicker of admiration. Perhaps surviving life with her wouldn't be as impossible as he had feared. By the afternoon, they returned to the palace. Lyra insisted on training Jack in the daily customs expected of a groom in her culture. There were gestures, words, and postures to memorize. Jack stumbled repeatedly, causing her to sigh dramatically and clutch her forehead. Human, you must remember. Every movement conveys respect, honor, and readiness to support me. Jack wiped sweat from his brow. I feel like I need a full-time tutor for survival here. Lyra smiled, softening her dramatic expression for a moment. And that, human, is why I am here. We are partners. You bring calm. I bring flair. Together, we are unstoppable. Jack couldn't help but smile faintly. Despite her theatrics, there was sincerity in her voice. Their next challenge came when news arrived of a crisis on the outskirts of the city. A rogue faction threatened to disrupt the delicate balance of trade and diplomacy. Lyra immediately gathered her council. Jack expected her to issue commands like a queen, but instead, she grabbed his arm. Human, today you will learn that your perspective is valuable. She said, you must accompany me. Do not worry, we will handle this together. They arrived at the contested area to find a group of heavily armed aliens blocking the trade route. Negotiations were tense, and Jack felt completely out of place. Lyra, however, moved through the crowd with grace and exaggerated gestures. Every word, every tilt of her head, every flare of her cape seemed calculated to assert authority and charm. Human, speak, she whispered. Jack swallowed. Maybe. We can compromise? He said, nervously. Allow part of the trade through while discussing their demands? Lyra raised her eyebrows and gave a slight nod. Excellent, human. Sometimes simplicity cuts through tension where theatrics alone cannot. Jack's suggestion worked. The rogue faction hesitated, then agreed to a temporary truce. Lyra turned to him, throwing her arms around his shoulders dramatically. See, your human insight, combined with my flair, creates harmony. Jack chuckled, shaking his head. Harmony with a side of chaos, maybe. That evening, they returned to the palace, exhausted but victorious. Lyra insisted on recounting the events to the city in a public announcement, ensuring that everyone knew the human groom had contributed to the resolution. Jack's face burned as he listened to her exaggerated praise, but he couldn't deny the sense of accomplishment. Later, in the quiet of their suite, Jack sat down, watching the city lights shimmer outside. Lyra joined him, curling up beside him in a dramatic but oddly comforting way. You see? Human, she said softly, for once letting the theatrics fade. There is more to life than rules and appearances. Sometimes, the heart and mind must act together. Jack smiled, a little awkwardly. Yeah, I think I'm starting to get that. Even if it comes with a lot of flair. Lyra laughed softly, her voice gentle. Flair makes life memorable. But you make it bearable. I think we make a good team. Jack felt a warmth he hadn't expected. Living with Lyra would be challenging. Her dramatics could be exhausting. But behind the theatrics was a partner who was clever, brave, and unexpectedly loyal. He leaned back in the floating chair and shook his head, smiling to himself. Everyone warned me about marrying an alien, but they didn't warn me about marrying a one-person performance every second of the day. Lyra gasped melodramatically. You wound me, human. I am more than a performance. Jack laughed. I know. I just mean, wow, this is going to be something else. Lyra beamed, her eyes sparkling. Yes, something extraordinary. And together, human, we will face every challenge. The galaxies will remember us. Jack shook his head, smiling again. I think the galaxies might be ready. Or terrified. Probably both. As night fell over Valen Prime, Jack realized something surprising. Life with Lyra wouldn't be easy. Every day would be unpredictable, dramatic, and exhausting. But it would never be boring. And perhaps, just perhaps, he was ready for that kind of adventure. For the first time since the wedding, Jack felt a sense of excitement, an understanding that this strange, overdramatic alien girl might just be the perfect partner to navigate a universe full of wonders, challenges, and cosmic chaos. And Lyra, ever dramatic, whispered one last line as Jack drifted towards sleep. "My human, tomorrow the stars themselves will watch us shine. Rest well, for our adventures are just beginning." Jack groaned softly. I should have started with coffee. But despite the exhaustion, he couldn't help but smile. Life with Lyra would be unusual, challenging, and completely over the top. And somehow, he was ready to embrace it.